Hey, welcome back to the Sunday Serving channel for a gospel message on this beautiful day. I think we should go back to the beginning, to the book of Genesis, to learn something very important that God taught the first members of mankind. Something about forgiveness, something about understanding what does God want of us. So, talks about the first two humans, Adam and Eve, and then their children, the first two sons of Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel. Let's read that story today. So, Genesis 4 starts like this. Now, Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I've gotten a man with the help of the Lord. So, the first child conceived and born by woman. That's amazing. And it's interesting that just says bore Cain, right? The name is given there. And again, she bore his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep, and Cain a worker of the ground. So imagine Abel must have been just like this, sitting here under a tree with some sheep, looking out over the nice view. You can imagine his brother Cain down there, maybe weeding that bit of broccoli down there or something. I don't know if he would be tending his sunflowers. But anyways, they had their vocations in life, livestock and gardening. Now, in the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground, and Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and of the fat portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering he had no regard. So, must have been close to God, and I'm sure their parents taught them about God, the Lord, maker of heaven and earth, the creator who he had known in the Garden of Eden, and they knew that they had to please the Lord, and so they brought offerings. Abel of the nicest sheep species, and Cain finding something from the fruit of the land. It's interesting, didn't say that Cain's offering was bad, or that Abel's was especially good. It just, that's what God chose. He took regard to Abel's offering and didn't especially like Cain's offering. So was Cain's offering bad? Was it evil? Was it wrong? Was Abel's that much better? It doesn't say, but I don't think so. But let's go on with the story here. It says, so Cain was very angry, and his face fell. And the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? And why has your face fallen? Notice this direct connection between people and God, right? So it seems like they're in conversation the whole time. So Cain becomes angry because he notices that God likes Abel's offering better than his. And he's surly and angry, and his face falls, and God talks to him right away. Why are you angry? So obviously God was in connection with Cain, and I'm sure loves everybody, loved Cain. So why was Cain angry? But it's interesting, this is what God says to Cain right after that. If you do well, will you not be accepted? Listen to that question. If you do well, will you not be accepted? So God didn't say, you sinned, you did something bad, your offering's terrible, maybe your fruit is moldy, or whatever. I don't like that eggplant. But if you do well, will you not be accepted? So just kind of keep doing what you're doing. I'm giving the preference to Abel today, and maybe tomorrow it'll be you. And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. I love that line. If you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is contrary to you, but you must rule over it. So right there, some wonderful advice from God right at the beginning for when we start to be tempted to be angry, to be upset at something, to hold a grudge, to be envious. Any of those negative feelings towards other people are wrong, and God here says, if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. It's there ready to pounce. It's waiting for you. It's waiting to trip you up. And its desire is contrary to you, but you must rule over it. So we have a choice. How do we rule over sin like that? How do we rule over temptation? Well, let's go on with the story. Cain spoke to Abel, his brother, and when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. So Cain didn't heed God's advice there. He didn't rule over that sin that was crouching at the door. And sure enough, it reared up and it overpowered Cain, and he got so angry that he killed his brother. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Where is Abel your brother?" He said, "I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper?" And the Lord said, "What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground. And now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it shall no longer yield to you its strength. You shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth." So again, God always waits for our hearts to be struck by sin. He doesn't strike the lightning right away necessarily, but he asked that question, what have you done? Similar what he asked Adam, and Eve, what have you done? What have you done? He knows what we've done. And again, Cain's answer wasn't very honest here. He said, "I don't know. I haven't done anything. I don't know where Abel is. Am I supposed to be taking care of him?" So how often do we have that attitude? Am I my brother's keeper? Is that really my business? And of course it is. God wants us to love our brothers, our neighbor as ourselves. And so he punished Cain, cursed him, that the ground wouldn't be fruitful, that he'd have to work, and that he would suffer. And because the blood, the sin, the result of his sin, the consequence of his sin was crying from the land. But it's interesting, this conversation continues between Cain and God. You'd think that God would just strike Cain dead, but I think we can learn from this too. God punishes, he corrects us, he tells us what's wrong, but he still has mercy. He's still ready to forgive because he wants us to learn how to forgive. So Cain said to the Lord, "My punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, you have driven me today away from the ground, and from your face I shall be hidden. I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me." So he's just repeating what God told him there. Then the Lord said to him, "Not so. If anyone kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold." And the Lord put a mark on Cain, lest any who found him should attack him. Then Cain went away from the presence of the Lord and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. So, even when we sin, we do something wrong, and God does have to punish us, or something bad happens to us, or we have to take the consequence of our sin. God still loves us, and He doesn't want that evil, that bad, to be multiplied. We shouldn't be taking revenge on sin. That shows the forgiving heart of God in spite of a terrible thing, as terrible as murder of your own brother. So, what do we learn from this story? Well, I think what's important is that, if things aren't going well, and even if we think that, we got something wrong, maybe we're not right before God, we have a choice. We can be jealous or be envious of someone that we perceive as getting everything right, doing everything right, and that irritates us. And we can let that anger and that bitterness amplify in us, but that's the way of Cain. That's going to lead to murder. That's sin crouching at the door that's rearing up. Or we can choose right then to listen to God and say, you know what? I'm going to celebrate someone else's joy or victory or blessing from God and be happy about it and choose a different way. And that's what God wants us to do, to be gracious, to forgive others, and not to choose this way of bitterness, because that leads to murder. And again, it didn't start because Cain did something terribly wrong or his gift was bad. It's just God said, keep doing what you're doing. I'll reward it. And so if we have that patient attitude, God's blessing comes. So let's choose the way of forgiveness, of serving God. Let's not build up bitterness, divisiveness, revenge. Isn't that ways too common in our world today? It leads to sin, it leads to death, it leads to murder. Let's go the other way. Let's be peacemakers, not necessarily peacekeepers, peacemakers. That involves forgiveness. That involves love. And on a beautiful day like this, whether it's sheep or the fields, God blesses it all. So God bless you. Have a wonderful day.